Welcome to Circuosity. I'm your host, Jim Strader-Sasser. Circuosity is my effort to improve people of faith's well-being, to provide them space to learn and to grow in their communities, and overall to improve the life that we share with one another in today's world. I offer a little bit around some techniques with the Enneagram and other contemplative practices that I'm familiar with. I also speak to the Episcopal Church's way of love, the Circle Way, and sometimes I just kind of yammer along. So, let's begin. Socrates is quoted as writing, "True wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us." I had a couple of situations, no, I'll be honest, problems this week, where I was very hasty in determining that I knew exactly what was going on with me, with the world around me, and with the solutions that I had to my problems. I was not truly wise. I think that part of what I experienced was the fact that I rely a great deal on my intuition and on my inferences. So I'd like to share some things I learned about myself in this process, and perhaps they will help you in how you are in the world and how you might think about being in a circular community where you can express your true self and learn more about what is actually going on. I personally believe that a person who wishes to be wise must first begin by becoming truly wise about themselves. The Enneagram is a powerful resource for seeking such wisdom. I trust that some of my listeners know about it and that others do not. So let me offer a couple of resources that I use, because I am certainly not an expert about the Enneagram or about myself, quite frankly. The first resource is the Enneagram Institute, and their resources are at enneagraminstitute.com. And that resource offers a lot of information about personality types and personality behaviors, and there are a variety of tests and techniques that you can use there to figure out what number or numbers in the Enneagram seem to make sense to you. The second is a book entitled The Essential Enneagram, the Definitive Personality Test and Self-Discovery Guide, written by David Daniels and Virginia Price, and it's available through Harper One Publications, or of course you can look for it on any of the resources that you use to find your books. In terms of myself, I have claimed the 4 as my number in the Enneagram. The Enneagram Institute identifies 4s as the individualist, and the Essential Enneagram book classifies 4s as being romantics. Type 4s are essentially self-aware and sensitive, emotionally honest, creative, and personal, but also quite mercurial and self-conscious. At least in my case, this is true. I tend to withdraw from people when I feel vulnerable or defective, and or when I feel that life has become disdainful. My basic fear is that I have no identity or personal significance, and my basic desire is indeed to find my true self and my significance in the world. So, what does that mean relative to the problems that I had this week? Well, I think I'm a very creative person, and I tend to be incredibly intuitive and incredibly emotional, and I tend to leap to conclusions without basically finding facts. So if I wish to improve in this behavior, I need to really step back and take a look at what is going on. what is true and what is not, and how do I react to what is happening in the moment rather than what has happened in the past or what I desire in the future. So, with that said, let me offer some thoughts about how I could have acted differently in the situations that I'm contemplating today. In both cases, my problems began by the simple fact that I didn't stop to think long enough about how my actions would impact other people. And I didn't understand the circumstances well enough to know that what I said or did would cause other people stress. And then when I became aware of the fact that I had impacted other people negatively, I thought I had an immediate solution that I could put into place without truly understanding the problem. So I complicated things in a way because I jumped to conclusions based upon my intuition and my inferences rather than looking for hard data and for finding a solution that would truly work. Ultimately, I was able to step back and communicate with the people that were engaged in these situations and come to find out that there was a different solution altogether that I should have used. More deeply, though, and more authentically, what I learned is it probably makes a great deal of sense for me to plan and to pray and to consider where my steps are in terms of how I am operating and who I am in the world in a more holistic sense. So these were valuable lessons to me, and it reminded me of a great tool that I'd like to share with you now. There are three centers of intelligence or three centers of being in the Enneagram that we should be aware of. These are the instinctive center or gut people, the feeling center or heart people, and the thinking center or cognitive or brain people. Instinctive people tend to be straightforward and direct. They are powerful personality types, whereas the feeling center people, such as myself, tend to be more relational and certainly more emotional. And the thinking center people tend to be more withdrawn and more cognitive, perhaps introverted in some cases, and tend to lead their thinking and their way of being with their brains. Regardless of type, a tool which can be very helpful for encountering oneself and how one is operating or being in the world is a tool called the Ladder of Inference. What the Ladder of Inference offers is a means for figuring out how we understand a situation and how we intuitively or inferentially respond to it. It may seem obvious to us that there's a particular situation going on, and based upon our center of being, we operate and we respond to it out of a way that normally works for us, our coping mechanisms, whatever they may be. What the Ladder of Inference suggests is that there is a step-by-step way for thinking about things. The first thing to do is to collect all the available data, which in the situations which I've briefly described to you, I did not do. All the data that surrounds us in daily life, including people's words, the tones of voice and body, statistical results that are available to us, and so on. And I'm taking this information from a wonderful article, which I'll provide a link to, called The Ladder of Inference by the Systems Thinker at systemsthinker.com. So because we don't pay attention to all of that data, we tend to choose data that melds into our previous experience or to our preferences. So what we should do in lieu of that is, no kidding, collect all the data that's possible and then paraphrase that data to sum it up into what is being said and what is not being said. And oh, by the way, are there other people that are involved in the situation that need to speak about the truth that they're seeing? The next thing we need to do is to name what is happening. This means to interpret the process by currently what is going on as opposed to what we want to be going on. This requires explanation and evaluation, and then we ultimately make a decision what to do. The beautiful thing about this ladder, especially how they've diagrammed it on the systemsthinker.com website, is that it turns into a perpetual circle. There's constantly an opportunity to look at the data, to name what is happening, to seek evaluation of what is happening versus what we may have inferred is happening, and then go back to the beginning and start again. So the conclusion on this article is, our assumptions and values and beliefs influence how we select data and interpret what is happening and deciding what to do. What they suggest and what they recommend is that we notice our conclusions as conclusions based on our inferences and not on self-evident facts, and that we use examples to illustrate the data that we selected that led to our conclusions, and then ask other people if in fact the way that we are interpreting the data or interpreting the situation or those circumstances in life where we've gotten ourselves into trouble, whether or not they would see it the same way and what is in our blind spot. And then at the same time to ask others to explain the steps in their thinking, because almost everything that we do involve a heck of a lot more people than we think that it does. And we need to think about how our actions are impacting those we love, as well as our careers, and those things that we do desire to do in the moment as well as in the future. To sum this all up, the entering assumption is that all of us on some level, hopefully a deep one, wish to know and yearn to become the person that the divine inspires us to become. We have this opportunity to live lives, and to live lives on a planet that is uniquely created and uniquely livable. At least for me, this means a dedicated effort to truly understand who I am and who I wish to be. For all of us who wish to make this world a better place, and for our faith communities, we must truly come to gain wisdom in such a way that we learn more about life, more about ourselves, and more about the world around us. And because I'm an individualist, I would say this work begins and ends with us on a moment-by-moment, hour-by-hour, day-by-day path. True wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us. Thank you for listening. I hope that you've found something purposeful in today's podcast. If you do like it, please follow us on Facebook or on Twitter or at circuosity.podbean.com. Please let your friends and family know too. And if you have any questions or suggestions or just want to say hi, please leave a comment on the podcast webpage or on the Facebook page, and I'll be happy to try and get back and communicate with you. For now, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be extremely gracious and loving unto you. May the Lord lift the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace, joy, and resurrection in new life. And the blessing of God Almighty, Creator, Redeemer, and Giver and Being of life be with you today and remain with you always. Thanks, God's blessings, and goodbye.